Hi, everyone. It's Deana and Kira here from Raising Adults podcast, and we're going to give you our video show notes for the episode that we've recently recorded about the long letting go, the process of helping your children be ready for the big launch by lots of little launches along the way.
Yes, and you just had the big launch.
I did. I just dropped my daughter off at college last weekend, actually, so this is very fresh for me. But what's great is you are doing it in some small ways already, and so we really felt it was relevant to talk about.
Absolutely. So let's start with why don't you share a little bit with the viewers, just a snippet of what the dropping off was like for you as a future-focused parent who has really actively done the long letting go, because there were some benefits there, right?
There were. So my overall experience was really positive, and there are a couple things that I think are really worth mentioning. And one is that I wasn't super sad, and at first that kind of gave me a complex because I thought, I'm supposed to be crying and devastated and all of this. But what it really showed me is that both myself and my daughter had done the work of preparing. And so we were able to feel really positive about this transition and that it was the logical next step rather than this devastating end to a chapter. It was just the next chapter, right? So that was something that was really unique. I'm admittedly still working through it because it's literally been less than a week and I'm still sometimes having this doubt of like, why am I not a mess, right? But I think that was one piece. Yeah, why am I fine? One piece of being a future-focused parent that was a positive. The other was there were a lot of activities through the weekend, and many of them were designed for parents. And I took the approach of, I'm new at this. I've never dropped a kid off at college before. I'm going to go to all the things that are available to me and really take advantage of that. And what I can say is a large portion of it, easily more than half, was not applicable because it was geared toward teaching the parents, now that your kid's at college, let them do some stuff. Don't be a helicopter parent. Don't be overbearing. Don't give into this tendency to overparent. And while I want to be clear, I don't place all the blame on that for parents. We have a lot of technology now. Lets us be in our kids' grill all the time, right? So there are some things that are partly a function of where we're at as a society that make it easier to check up on your kids, do things for them, know where they're at, all of that. And I'm telling you, I have deleted Find My Friends. I do not know where my daughter or her phone is right now. And that was really intentional. So when I was attending these kind of workshops, it was actually pretty great and rewarding to know that, this isn't speaking to me. I've done this letting go in advance. I haven't been helicoptering. My helicopter went off the helipad long ago. And I'm really just enjoying watching her helicopter take off at this point. And so that was really a great piece of it too.
Yeah, so I think we talked about a couple different ways that the letting go happens from when they're small all the way to the end. And then the new piece of letting go, which is once they've launched, they're going to maybe make decisions that you don't agree with, and you got to let that go.
Yes.
So I'll just share briefly about, because I'm on the younger end, some of the stuff that we talked about with my kiddos. So first of all, I talked about on the podcast before that every year my kids get a new birthday chore or responsibility and a new birthday privilege. But I think what that really does is makes it a long letting go. Every year I am giving you a little more responsibility, expecting a little bit more of you, taking more off my plate, giving it to you. And with that, every year, I'm trusting you with something new that I now know you're capable of and I think that you can handle. Yeah. So that's something that up until this point, I think has kept me really accountable for continuing to let go. Because as I mentioned on the podcast, I tend to be a micromanager. So for micromanagers, letting go is really hard, but it's so important. And this was the other thing we talked about. Future-focused parents are micromanagers on the front end. They have to be when they're toddlers because you are micromanaging everything to try and lay this really strong foundation. The danger, of course, is if that tips into their readiness for some independence and you are continuing to micromanage, now you're smothering. And so that's something I've had to be just so aware of as a natural smotherer that there's a tendency there and I need to really keep an eye on that that long letting go. So that was huge. And then this year, I mentioned, as my kids turned 8, was a huge epiphany of independence. Like, they are ready for so much more, and that time is here. And that awareness, being aware, I think we said, was one of the keys to this.
Is.
You have to watch for the triggers, watch for the moments. They're going to show up, and they might not show up in the most obvious way. So you have to be aware so that when it happens, you get to go, aha, we're here. Now it's time to start letting go in this area. I've clearly laid that foundation. Now I'm going to hand that over to you. So you shared 3 fabulous ways of noticing, right?
Yes,
So tell a little
3
bit about
things
that.
to watch for. And they are, like you said, not always what you would expect. So, of course, we mentioned if your child actually is asking, hey, I'd like to do this myself, and that can happen. I mean, from super young, they're struggling with their shoes, but they're like, do it myself. So definitely pay attention to that. Mm-hmm. But another thing that can come from the child's side is just frustration, and that is not always verbalized. So you might have to watch for frustration in actions, or them indicating that they're overstimulated in some way. Maybe they even moved to a different area. The example I gave on the episode was my son really didn't like me hovering over homework, even starting in those early grade school years, and I had to pay attention to that. And while I was still the ultimate accountability for things like, do you have homework and can I check it over once it's finished? He really didn't want me over his shoulder while he was working, and he never said that. He would get up and leave, or he would get frustrated and erase until there was a hole in the paper. So he was showing me, I'm frustrated with this much oversight. Yeah. This is coming across as smothering to me. And he showed me with action. So we talked about paying attention to frustration and signs of frustration in children. And then the last one that I mentioned is really on the parent side, and that's paying keen attention to the things that you are figuratively holding. Meaning, is your to-do list extra long because you have things on your list that really should be on your kids' list? Like, did they turn in the field trip permission slip? Or do you have something on your list that maybe should be on your spouse's list? I mean, we even do this with adults, and I know for me, erring more on the side of the, quote, control freak, I can do that as well. Mm-hmm. I'm owning other people's stuff. And that one gets missed a lot because I think as busy parents, there's this tendency to not evaluate our mental to-do lists because we're thinking, well, of course I'm thinking and managing all this. This is what I'm supposed to do as a parent. It's normal that my mind is busy and I'm managing not only a calendar, but everyone's activities and who needs to do what. But we've got to pay attention to, am I thinking about or spending time worrying about or nagging someone else about something they really could be doing themselves? And so whenever possible, we're big fans of delegate when and where appropriate, and just keep doing that. So those were 3 things we talked about. Another thing that you mentioned that really sparked something for me is we ended the episode, and you'll have to listen to hear it, but we ended the episode with 5 really key questions to ask about your parenting strategies. But Kira, as you know, adds a chore, but also a privilege at every birthday. And one, I'll give you a sneak peek, one of those questions was about, are your parenting strategies balancing freedom and responsibility? Mm-hmm. And that is a big key, that as you give increasing responsibility, then they can earn the increasing freedom that comes with that. And we've got to pay attention to that as parents, because if you give too much freedom in the absence of responsibility, you get a really, really challenging dynamic where you don't have any authority as a parent at all. You're really seen as kind of just nothing. And you do want to make sure that you're still seen as someone that's worth going to for input. At the same time, on the other end, if you get too authoritative and you're all about the responsibility and not ever granting privileges, that is going to be so frustrating to a child, especially as they move in to those tween and teen and young adult years, but even as a young person, and it will make them want to push you away. And we want to avoid that. You want to be that person they still come to as a young adult. And as Kira mentioned, I did recently have my daughter make a decision that was different from what I would have picked. But here's what was great. She still asked what I thought. Mm-hmm. And that's the victory, is that she still came to me, said, what would you do? What do you think about this? And I got to weigh in. So that's a win. If you get your children well into young adulthood and they still at least come to you, that is fantastic. We don't want to lose that privilege. It's a really unique thing.
Well, and one of the things we talked about, and this is the other nugget, the other takeaway from the episode, is that what's happening there is you've built trust. They have become aware that they can trust you to ask what you think without judgment, without fear, that you're not going to be they're not going to be managing your feelings about it, that you're going to be able to share what you think and trust them to make the right decision. And then you did something really beautiful when your kiddo then made a different decision after asking your opinion, decided, nope, I'm going to do what I think, and that's different. And talk about how you handled that, because that's a takeaway too. So, yes, we have to handle the dialogue in that trusting way. We also have to handle the fallout in a trusting way, and that is key. So share a little bit about that.
So a couple things here that, of course, we go into more in depth on the episode, but are just worth touching on, is that my words and my feelings did not match, and I was very honest about that. What I said to my daughter was honest, but how I felt was ouchy, and I did not leak that onto her. It would not have been fair to her. And I want to encourage parents to also pay attention to context. In the context of this decision, in the aftermath of it, we were very close to taking her to college, and I was not willing to ruin that time. But here's the other thing. It's still okay to ask for what you need to. And hopefully, if you've built a safe and trusting relationship, you can do this. And so I did tell my daughter, she could tell that it wasn't what I would have picked. I wasn't being a stinker, but she knew. And what I told her was, I absolutely respect your choice and your ability and right to make that choice, but I need space to feel my feelings about it. And so it needs to be okay that I'm not doing the happy dance about what you picked. And what was great is she completely gave me room for that, and then even checked in with me about other things. Well, would you like to see the email I wrote? And asked what I was ready for and not ready for, which was really appreciated.
Right. And when you think about the relationship that you want to have with your children in adulthood, once they get married and have their own children, maybe, you want to be someone they can come to. And that's what this whole episode is leading up to, in my opinion, right? I have friends who don't feel safe with their parents. They don't feel they can share honestly with their parents. And I, as a parent, want an open, honest relationship with my kids. So that means I have to, first and foremost, not smother them and show them, I trust you. This is a dialogue. We're gaining in independence as you grow. And then later down the line, when maybe they do something that I don't agree with, show them, that's okay. I love you anyway. I'll be here to support you if that goes sideways. And if it goes great, this is the other thing we talked about. It might be because we're different people.
Yeah.
This is the other thing. Sometimes they're going to make a decision that you don't agree with. If it's not a character decision, if it's not an integrity decision, it might be that you're just different people, and that's okay. You're allowed to disagree.
Yeah.
So we hope you enjoyed the video. Show notes, obviously tons more information in the episode itself, but that's just kind of like the main takeaways, the main things that we covered. Don't forget, we're always available for coaching. So if you've got a sticky situation or any kind of parenting situation that you'd like to flesh out with us and using our future-focused parenting philosophy, we're available. You can email us info@futurefocusedparenting.com or go to the website futurefocusedparenting.com. Thanks for watching.
Bye.